Margaret, Maggie, Dawson sat in her small Florida kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the dim light. The walls around her were cluttered with fading photographs. Her late husband smiling on a beach, her daughter as a teenager at graduation, the dog they once had. All gone now, the silence pressing on her shoulders like a weight she had learned to carry alone. It was in that silence she first found him. Online. A message, simple at first. "You have kind eyes, Margaret." She nearly deleted it, assuming it was another scam. But something about the sender's words kept her finger hovering. His profile picture was striking. A man in his late 50s, robe in white, standing against the skyline of Dubai's glittering towers. He called himself Sheikh Khalid Al-Rahman. The conversations grew daily, then nightly. At first, Maggie guarded her heart, but the Sheikh's words slipped past her defenses. He spoke of destiny, of how he too had known loneliness after his wife's passing, of how fate had drawn them together across oceans. He sent her poems, photographs of luxury, promises of a life she had never dared dream of. "You deserve to be treated like a queen, Margaret," he wrote one evening. "Come to Dubai. I want to show you a world where you will never cry again." Her chest ached at the thought. For years, Maggie had lived in the shadows of grief. Her days empty, her nights endless. Now, someone saw her, not as an aging widow, but as a woman worth loving again. Her daughter, Emily, wasn't convinced. "Mom, please." Emily begged one afternoon over coffee. "You don't even know this man. It's dangerous. These online people prey on women." "He's not like that," Maggie snapped, her voice sharper than intended. She softened. "Sweetheart, I've talked to him for months. He understands me. He loves me." Emily's eyes filled with worry. "Or he loves what you have. What if he's lying? What if—" Maggie reached across the table, taking her daughter's hand. "I need this chance. You have your life, your family. I have nothing here. Let me try." The fight drained from Emily's face, but the fear lingered in her silence. Days later, Maggie stood at Orlando International Airport, clutching her worn leather purse and passport like a lifeline. Her hands trembled, not from doubt, but from anticipation. Around her, travelers bustled past her children, business suits, duty-free bags. She fell out of place in her modest cardigan and neatly pressed slacks, but she told herself it didn't matter. Soon, she'd step into the arms of a man who promised forever. On the plane, she pressed her forehead against the window as Florida's coastline shrank below. Her heart pounded with nervous hope. She replayed his voice messages in her mind, low, steady, comforting. She imagined the look in his eyes when he finally saw her in person. Would he call her beautiful? Would he kiss her hand the way he once promised? She ignored the whispers of doubt. She ignored Emily's warnings. This was her chance. Her story wasn't over yet. Hours passed in the air. The cabin dimmed to twilight as passengers pulled blankets over themselves. Maggie sat awake, staring at the small photograph tucked into her book. Her husband, gone 10 years now. "Wish me luck," she whispered to him, a tear slipping down her cheek. When the captain's voice announced her descent into Dubai, Maggie's pulse quickened. Through the oval window, she glimpsed lights, endless lights, stretching across the desert like stars fallen to earth. Skyscrapers pierced the night, glowing like beacons of another world. She smiled, whispering to herself, "This is it, my new beginning." What she didn't know was that she was flying straight into a dream that would twist into a nightmare. The wheels of the plane screeched against the tarmac, jolting Maggie awake from a restless half-sleep. Her heart fluttered with anticipation as the pilot's voice announced, "Welcome to Dubai." She pressed her face to the window, eyes wide. The sight was unlike anything she had imagined. Towers glittering against the desert night, roads lined with streaming headlights, a city carved from wealth and power. Her pulse raced. Somewhere in this dazzling place, the man of her dreams was waiting. Inside the terminal, the crowd swept her forward like a tide. Men in pristine white robes moved with quiet confidence. Women in black abayas glided past, their faces serene. Maggie clutched her purse tighter, acutely aware of her cardigan and slacks, of her foreignness. Yet the thought of him, her Sheikh, steadied her. As she emerged into the arrivals hall, she scanned the faces. She imagined him there, tall, regal, smiling as he stepped forward to embrace her. Her stomach knotted with nervous excitement. But he wasn't there. Instead, a young man in his 20s approached, holding a small placard with her name scrawled in uneven letters. Mrs. Dawson. "Madam," he asked, his accent heavy but words polite, "I work for Sheikh Khalid. Please come. Car is waiting." For a moment, disappointment pricked at her chest. She had pictured their reunion as a scene from a romance film. But reason whispered. Of course a man of his stature wouldn't wade into a busy terminal himself. It made sense. "Yes, of course," she said softly, forcing a smile as she followed the driver. The humid night air outside wrapped around her like a blanket, thick with the scent of fuel and desert wind. Maggie's eyes widened at the sight of sleek cars gliding past. Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, Lamborghinis purring like beasts of metal. The city beyond shimmered with neon and glass, a mirage made real. The driver opened the rear door of a black SUV. Inside, the leather seats were cool against her palms. As the car pulled away, Maggie pressed her face to the window, her excitement swelling again. The Sheikh lived here. This was his world. And soon it would be hers. The SUV glided onto a wide boulevard lined with skyscrapers that seemed to scrape the heavens. Maggie gasped at the sheer scale of it all. One building shimmered with digital lights that danced like waves. Another spiraled into the clouds, its peak lost in the night sky. "Beautiful, yes?" the driver said, glancing at her in the mirror. "Yes," Maggie breathed. "It's like a dream." For a while, she let herself be swept away by the city's dazzle. But gradually, the landscape began to change. The towers thinned. The neon gave way to quiet streets and dimmer lights. The roads grew narrower, less polished. "Are we going to the city?" she asked, her voice tentative. The driver's smile was polite, unchanging. "Sheikh prefers privacy. Villa outside. Very safe, very beautiful." Maggie nodded, though unease stirred in her stomach. She told herself it was fine. Of course a wealthy man would have an estate away from the chaos of the city. Still, she noticed how the car sped past the glamour she had longed to see, steering deeper into unfamiliar ground. Minutes turned into an hour. Streetlights grew sparse. Shadows pressed against the windows. Maggie's hands fidgeted in her lap, knuckles whitening as doubt whispered. She thought of Emily's voice pleading, "What if he's lying?" Her throat tightened. "How much longer?" she asked, her voice a little sharper. "Not long," the driver replied quickly. "You will see." The SUV slowed at last, turning onto a long, gated drive. Ahead, a villa loomed, grand, sprawling, surrounded by high walls. Its windows glowed faintly, like eyes watching her approach. The gates creaked open. The car rolled inside. The sound of them clanging shut behind sent a shiver down her spine. Maggie swallowed hard, pushing away the fear clawing at her chest. This was it, her new beginning. Her Sheikh was waiting. Yet as the SUV stopped and the driver stepped out, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just crossed into a world she didn't understand, and one she might never escape. The villa's heavy wooden doors swung open with a groan, and cool air spilled into the humid night. Maggie stepped hesitantly across the marble threshold, her suitcase wheels clattering against the polished floor. The space was cavernous. High ceilings, chandeliers that glittered like frozen rain, walls lined with gold-trimmed mirrors. For a moment, awe drowned her unease. "This is real," she told herself. "This is his home." Then, from across the grand hall, a figure emerged. He was tall, robed in flowing white, his dark beard trimmed to perfection. His stride was measured, confident, as if the room itself bowed to his presence. His eyes, deep and unreadable, settled on Maggie. "Maggie," he said, his voice rich, accented, and smooth as velvet. He took her hand before she could even extend it, bowing slightly. "At last, the heavens have delivered you to me." Her breath caught. This was the moment she had imagined on countless sleepless nights. She felt small beneath his gaze, girlish even, though she was 65 and weathered by life. "You're even more beautiful in person," he continued. Color rose in her cheeks. I wasn't sure you'd think so. He smiled, revealing flawless white teeth. A woman who doubts her worth is a woman in need of a man who sees it. The words soothed her like warm honey poured over an old wound. She laughed nervously, clutching her purse like a shield. The sheik gestured toward the velvet couches that lined the room. Please sit. You must be exhausted from your journey. As she lowered herself onto the cushions, servants appeared wordlessly, setting down silver trays of fruit, tiny cups of coffee, dishes that smelled of saffron and roasted lamb. The quiet efficiency unsettled her, but she forced a smile. He sat opposite, leaning forward slightly, his eyes never leaving her face. I promised you a new beginning, and here you are. Did I not keep my word? Maggie's heart fluttered. Yes, you did. And soon, everything you have ever longed for will be yours. But for tonight, you must rest. Tomorrow, I will show you my world. She nodded, comforted by the certainty in his voice. Yet somewhere deep inside, a question burned. And our future? She asked softly. You spoke of marriage, of building a life together. The sheik's expression did not falter, but his answer came with a pause, long enough for doubt to whisper. In time, Margaret. Marriage is not a matter of haste. First, you must become familiar with my ways, my family, my world. Such things require patience. Her fingers tightened on her skirt. Of course, she murmured quickly, ashamed of her impatience. I understand. He smiled again, but the warmth felt rehearsed, like an actor delivering a line. You are wise, and soon you'll be rewarded for your faith. The conversation drifted after that. Talk of the villa's gardens, of Dubai's wonders, of how fortunate they were to find one another. Yet whenever Maggie asked a question of substance, about his family, his business, his promises, his answers slid away like water slipping through her fingers. Still, she ignored the prickle of unease at the back of her neck. She told herself it was only nerves, only the strangeness of being in a new country. Hadn't she prayed for this? Hadn't she begged the universe for love? When he rose to leave, he pressed her hand between both of his. Rest well, my queen, he whispered. You are safe here. Tomorrow will be the beginning of forever. As the door closed behind him, Maggie lay back against the cushions, her body trembling with exhaustion and hope. She wanted to believe every word. But in the silence that followed, the grand villa felt less like a palace and more like a labyrinth, endless, echoing, and impossible to escape. The morning sun filtered through gauzy curtains, flooding the guest room with golden light. For a brief moment, Maggie felt like a queen. The bed beneath her was soft as clouds, the sheets cool and fragrant with lavender. When she pushed open the balcony doors, a desert breeze swept in, carrying with the faint scent of jasmine from the gardens below. It was everything she had imagined: luxury, serenity, the life she had been promised. But the illusion began to crumble quickly. At breakfast, served on silver platters, the sheik appeared radiant once again in his immaculate white robes. He greeted her warmly, but his words came with a surprising edge. For your safety, he said smoothly, extending his hand, I must hold on to your phone. Foreigners are watched very closely here. It is easy to say the wrong thing, to cause trouble without meaning to. Maggie hesitated, fingers tightening around the device. That phone was her lifeline, the only thread connecting her to Emily back in Florida. You don't trust me? He asked, tilting his head, a soft smile masking the sharpness in his eyes. I do. Of course I do, she whispered. Slowly, she placed the phone into his palm. He slipped it into the folds of his robe without another word. Later that day, as she unpacked her belongings, another request followed. Your credit cards, the sheik said. Let me hold them. You are my guest, my queen. You should not worry about money. I will provide. His words were gentle, persuasive, but his tone left no room for refusal. Maggie forced a smile, telling herself it was only cultural differences, only the way things were done here. One by one, she handed them over, each card leaving her fingers like a small piece of herself. Days blurred together after that. The villa was beautiful beyond measure. Gleaming floors, fountains that whispered in marble courtyards, gardens blooming beneath the desert sun. Servants appeared silently to meet her every need. placing food at her fingertips, drawing baths laced with rose petals. Yet Maggie began to notice what lay beneath the beauty. The windows in her room were barred, their ornate latticework disguising the truth. Guards patrolled the grounds, their eyes cold, their weapons visible at their sides. Whenever she wandered too far from the main hall, a servant would gently, but firmly redirect her. "You'll get lost, madam," they said with polite smiles. But their hands hovered close to her arms, ready to grip if she resisted. At night, she heard whispers in the hallways, low voices, harsh laughter, the sound of locks clicking into place. Sometimes, she thought she heard another woman crying behind closed doors. Still, she told herself to be patient. Perhaps this was simply the way things worked in his world. Perhaps, in time, he would explain. But the truth revealed itself in a single conversation. One evening, as they dined in a candlelit chamber, Maggie finally gathered the courage to speak. When can I go home?" she asked softly, her fork trembling in her hand. The Sheikh's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. He set down his glass of wine, folding his hands together as though considering her words. "Home." His voice was calm, almost amused. "Your home is here now, Maggie." Her breath caught. "But my daughter—" "You belong to me," he interrupted, the softness gone from his tone. His voice echoed against the walls, low and final. "Your old life is finished. Do not speak of leaving again." The word struck her like a blow. She searched his face for kindness, for the warmth he once showed, but all she found was a mask, smooth, impenetrable, and cold. That night, Maggie sat on the edge of her bed, staring at a reflection in the gilded mirror. Her own face looked foreign, pale, fearful, and aged beyond her years. The golden room around her gleamed with luxury, but it felt less like a palace and more like a cage, each sparkling detail mocking her naivety. She tried to tell herself it wasn't real, that this was all a misunderstanding. Yet, deep in her chest, dread took root. She was not a guest. She was not a queen. She was a prisoner. And the man she thought would save her had just declared ownership of her soul. The villa felt different after that night. Maggie moved through its marble halls, as though walking inside a dream turned sour. Each chandelier's sparkle, a cruel reminder of the freedom she had traded away. She ate what was placed before her, bathed in waters drawn by unseen hands, slept on silk sheets, but none of it soothed her any more. Every luxury was a chain she couldn't see but could feel tightening. Her mind echoed with his words. "You belong to me." One afternoon, while wandering the corridors, she paused near the servants' quarters. The air was warmer here, less perfumed, heavy with the smell of spices and detergent. Voices drifted from behind a half-closed door, low at first, then clearer as she edged closer. She knew she shouldn't listen, but something inside her pushed her feet forward. Another one, a man's voice chuckled. "Oh, desperate. They always come." A woman snorted. "You think she's the first?" These foreigners believe every word. Marriage, love, riches, they swallow it all. Maggie froze, her blood turning cold. "Did you hear what happened to a French woman?" Another voice chimed in. "Signed over her accounts, then gone. No one asked questions. Families never hear from them again." Soft laughter followed, sharp as broken glass. Maggie clapped a hand over her mouth to stifle a gasp. Her knees weakened beneath her. They weren't talking about someone else. They were talking about her. "This one won't last either," the woman added. "The Sheikh plays the same game every time." The conversation trailed off as footsteps approached. Maggie stumbled back, pressing herself against the wall until the servants passed by, oblivious to her pale, trembling figure. She hurried to her room, heart hammering. Her thoughts spun, colliding into each other like shards of glass. It can't be true. He loves me. He said he loves me. But the voices replayed in her head, mocking, certain, cruelly amused. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling as the air grew heavy around her. Every sound in the villa seemed sinister. The creak of footsteps, the click of locks, the muffled cries she thought she heard from somewhere down the hall. Her illusions cracked with every echo. The next morning, she studied the Sheikh across the breakfast table. His face was calm, unreadable, his hands moving gracefully as he sliced fruit, as though nothing had shifted. But to Maggie, he looked different now. The warmth in his eyes seemed hollow, rehearsed. The curve of his smile no longer reassured her. It terrified her. She forced herself to speak, her voice barely steady. "I overheard the staff last night." His gaze flicked up, sharp as a blade. "And what did you hear?" She faltered. They said I wasn't the first, that there were others." Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. For the first time, she saw something in his expression, a flash of irritation, quickly buried beneath his smooth exterior. "You shouldn't listen to gossip," he said finally, his tone firm but controlled. "Servants speak nonsense. They envy you. You are mine. That is all that matters." His words, meant to calm, only deepened the pit in her stomach. The way he said mine was no longer tender. It was ownership, a possession declared. Maggie lowered her eyes, nodding quickly to avoid further anger. But inside, the final splinters of her fantasy collapsed. The Sheikh was not her savior. He was her captor. That night, sleep would not come. She sat in the dark, trembling, her fingers digging into the sheets. Every instinct screamed that the walls around her were not protecting her. They were closing in, and she knew, sooner or later, he would stop hiding the truth. The air in the villa grew heavier with each passing day, suffocating Maggie with its silence. After what she overheard from the staff, she could no longer look at the Sheikh without feeling a chill crawl up her spine. His every smile felt rehearsed, his every touch staged. She told herself she had to know the truth. That evening, they dined in a smaller chamber, the table set with flickering candles and dishes she could barely taste. Her fork trembled in her hand as she forced herself to look at him. "Khalid," she whispered, her voice raw, "I need to ask you something." His eyes lifted, calm, unreadable. "Yes, my queen." Her throat tightened. She wanted to retreat, to swallow the words, but the memory of the servant's cruel laughter pushed her forward. "Do you really love me?" For the first time since she'd arrived, he did not immediately answer. He leaned back in his chair, studying her as though she were an insect pinned beneath glass. Then, slowly, a smile tugged at his lips, colder, sharper than any he had shown before. "Love?" he said softly, the word dripping with mockery. "You still believe in such things?" Her chest constricted. "You told me." "I told you what you needed to hear," he cut in, his tone slicing like a blade. "Do you think I chose you for love?" "No, Margaret. I chose you because you are exactly what I needed." Her fork clattered against the plate. "What do you mean?" He leaned forward now, his voice dropping to a venomous purr. "You are old, lonely, desperate. That makes you valuable. Women like you cling to promises. You will give me what I want." Tears blurred her vision. "I don't understand." "You will," he said, pulling a folder from beneath the table and sliding across to her. Inside were documents, neatly stacked, covered in stamps and signatures. "You will sign these. Transfer your U.S. assets, your accounts, your property, everything. Then, perhaps, I will let you leave." Maggie's heart thundered in her chest. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "I won't." His laugh rang out, cold and merciless. "You think you have a choice? Look around you. You have no phone, no cards, no way to reach your daughter. This villa is your prison, and I hold the key." Her tears spilled freely now, her hands trembling in her lap. "Why me?" she choked out. His smile widened, wolfish. "Because you were easy. Because you wanted to believe. You begged for love, and I gave you a fairy tale. But fairy tales always end." She stared at him, her world shattering piece by piece. Every tender word, every promise, every dream, lies. The man she had crossed an ocean for was not a savior, but a predator. Her voice broke as she whispered, "I want to go home." His expression hardened, the mask dropping completely. "Home." His eyes burned with dark amusement. "You have no home. You belong to me now. And until you sign, you will not leave these walls alive." Silence fell between them, broken only by the crackle of candle flames. Maggie sat frozen, her breath shallow, her mind a storm of terror. She had thought she was stepping into a new life, but now she understood. She had walked willingly into a trap. That night, in the darkness of her locked room, Maggie curled into herself, sobbing quietly. The villa, once a palace, had transformed into a tomb. The man she once called her love had stripped her down to nothing more than prey, and she knew with chilling certainty that if she didn't act soon, she would never see the outside world again. The walls seemed to breathe around her that night, pressing closer, suffocating her. Maggie lay on the cold mattress, staring at the ceiling, Khalid's words echoing in her skull. You belong to me now. Every syllable was a shackle. She couldn't accept it. She wouldn't. Her heart pounded with a reckless rhythm. If she stayed, she would die here, forgotten, erased. But if she left, if she somehow broke free, maybe there was still hope. The thought of her daughter's face, waiting anxiously back in Florida, ignited a flicker of courage. That flicker grew until it burned. Maggie rose from the bed, every joint stiff with fear. She pressed her ear to the door. Silence. Slowly, she twisted the handle. To her shock, it wasn't locked tonight. Perhaps a mistake. Perhaps fate. She slipped into the corridor. The villa was dark, shadows stretching like predators across the marble floors. The air was thick with incense, masking the faint hum of electricity. Her bare feet padded softly against the cold stone as she crept toward the staircase. Every step was a prayer. When she reached the lower level, she spotted a side door near the kitchens. Beyond it, through the slats of a wooden screen, she glimpsed the outline of the outer courtyard. And there, at the far end, the massive gates. Freedom was so close she could taste it. Her pulse roared in her ears as she crouched, inching toward the exit. The door groaned when she pushed it open, and she froze, holding her breath. No movement, no voices. She slipped through and darted into the night air. The courtyard was vast, the villa looming like a silent beast behind her. Moonlight spilled across the tile ground, guiding her toward the gates. Her legs shook, but she forced them to move faster, faster. With each step, she whispered in her mind, Florida. Home. Safe. She was 20 feet away when a sharp crack split the air. A flashlight beam seared into her eyes. Stop, a voice barked. Her body reacted before her mind could. She ran. Her lungs screamed as she sprinted for the gates, her hands outstretched as if she could claw her way through the iron. But heavy footsteps thundered behind her. A hand like steel clamped down on her arm, yanking her back so hard she nearly dislocated her shoulder. She cried out, thrashing, kicking, but another guard caught her from behind, pinning her arms to her chest. No, let me go, she screamed, her voice breaking into sobs. Please, I just want to go home. The guards dragged her across the courtyard like a rag doll. She fought until her strength gave out, her feet scraping against the stone, her breath hitching in panicked gasps. When they shoved her into the villa, Khalid was waiting. His pristine white robe seemed to glow in the dim light, but his face was shadowed, twisted with fury. So he murmured, stepping forward, My little bird thought she could fly. Maggie trembled, her knees buckling. Please, I can't stay here. I can't. The slap came so fast she barely registered it. Her cheek burned, her ears ringing. You embarrass me, he hissed. After everything I gave you, this is how you repay me? By trying to run like a thief in the night. She collapsed to the floor, clutching her face, tears streaming unchecked. You lied to me. You promised me love. His laugh was sharp, cruel. Love? You are nothing but property, and property does not escape. He snapped his fingers. The guards lifted her roughly, dragging her back to her room. One shoved her hard enough that she fell to her knees. Lock it, Khalid ordered coldly. And no food tomorrow. Let her learn what defiance tastes like. The door slammed shut, the click of the lock echoing like a death sentence. Maggie lay curled on the floor, her body aching, her spirit splintered. The flicker of hope that once lit her chest had been snuffed out brutally, leaving only ashes. In the darkness, she whispered to herself, over and over, I'll never see Florida again. The villa seemed to agree. Its silence absolute, as though the walls themselves had swallowed her despair whole. The days blurred together after her failed escape. Maggie's body ached from the rough handling, her stomach hollow from the withheld meals. But worse than the physical pain was the silence. Thick, oppressive, broken only by the occasional click of guards outside her door. She lay on the bed, staring blankly at the barred window. For the first time since her husband's death years ago, she felt a finality to her existence. It was as if her life had already ended, though her body remained. The door creaked open one afternoon. Maggie flinched, expecting the guards. Instead, a slim young woman stepped inside, balancing a tray of food. She moved quickly, her eyes darting nervously to the hall before she shut the door behind her. Their eyes met. The girl couldn't have been more than 20. Her features were delicate, framed by a scarf that looked hastily tied. She set the tray down without a word, then hesitated. For a moment, Maggie thought she would leave. But then the girl whispered, "Eat. You'll need strength." Maggie's lips parted in shock. She hadn't heard a kind voice in days. Her throat burned as she rasped, Who are you?" The girl glanced back toward the hallway before replying. "My name is Aisha. I'm a maid here." Her accent was soft, but her words carried urgency. Maggie sat up slowly, her bones heavy with exhaustion. Why are you helping me?" Aisha's gaze dropped to the floor. "Because I was like you once. I thought I was coming for work, for a better life. Instead, they took my passport. I've been trapped here ever since." The truth struck Maggie like ice water. She wasn't the only one. There were others, countless, maybe, caught in this gilded prison. Tears welled in her eyes. "I can't survive this," she whispered. "I tried to run. They'll kill me next time." Aisha crouched close, her voice a trembling hiss. "Don't let them break you. That's what they want. I can't do much, but I can do this." From beneath the folds of her apron, she pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. With trembling hands, she placed it on the bed. Maggie unwrapped it, her breath catching. A phone. Old, scratched, but whole. Her fingers trembled as though it were a holy relic. "How did you—" Aisha cut her off, fear flickering in her eyes. "I smuggled it. It's dangerous, for both of us. Keep it hidden. Only use it when no one is near." Maggie clutched the phone to her chest, her heart racing. Hope, real hope, flared for the first time since she arrived. But doubt clawed at her. What do they find it? Aisha's jaw tightened. Then we're both dead. But maybe you can reach someone. Family? Police? The mention of family made Maggie's throat ache. Her daughter's face flashed in her mind. Worried, calling, never getting an answer. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My daughter. She doesn't even know I'm alive." Aisha touched her arm lightly. The first human kindness Maggie had felt in weeks. Then fight for her. Don't give up. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Aisha sprang to her feet, snatching the empty tray. In an instant, her expression hardened back into that of a silent servant. Before she slipped out, she whispered one last warning. "Hide it well. Trust no one but me." The door shut, leaving Maggie alone again. She sat frozen, staring at the phone in her hand, tears streaking down her face. Her world had collapsed, her body battered, her spirit nearly broken. Yet now, in the palm of her hand, she held the tiniest crack in the walls of her prison. A chance. For the first time in weeks, Maggie dared to breathe deeply. And for the first time in months, she dared to believe escape might still be possible. The phone felt heavier than stone in Maggie's trembling hands. For hours, she sat with it hidden beneath her pillow, her pulse thrumming each time footsteps passed her door. She couldn't stop thinking of Aisha's warning. If they find it, we're both dead. But silence was worse. Silence meant vanishing. That night, long after the villa had gone still, Maggie pulled the phone out. Her fingers shook so violently she could barely press the buttons. She scrolled through the faded contacts until she found the one name that made her heart clench. Emily. Her daughter. She pressed call. The ringing dragged on, each tone echoing louder than thunder in her ears. Then, Hello? Mom. Emily's voice groggy, confused. Maggie's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't realized how desperately she needed to hear it until now. Tears sprang hot to her eyes. "Emily," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Listen to me. Please listen." "Mom, where are you? We've been so worried." Maggie cut her off, panic surging. "No time. I'm not safe. Dubai Villa. He's keeping me here. Please, you have to help me." Her whisper grew frantic, tumbling over itself. "They took my passport. My money." He lied. "I can't get out." The door handle rattled. Maggie froze. "Mama, what are you talking about?" "Who?" Emily's voice rose, frantic now. Boot steps thundered closer. Maggie pressed the phone tighter to her lips. "Call the police. The U.S. Embassy. Tell them I'm trapped. Don't stop, promise me." The door burst open. Light flooded the room. 2 guards surged inside, eyes locking on the glowing phone. Maggie gasped, clutching it to her chest. "No!" One guard lunged, wrenching from her grip. She screamed, the sound raw, primal. "Mom!" Emily's voice shrieked through the tiny speaker. "Mom, what's happening?" "Mom!" The guard slammed the phone shut, killing the line. Silence swallowed the room. Maggie collapsed to her knees, sobbing, arms reaching toward the emptiness where the phone had been. The guard said nothing. One delivered a vicious backhand that split her lip, while the other yanked her up by the arm. They dragged her toward the bed, throwing her down like garbage. "Stupid woman." One muttered in Arabic. The door locked again. Darkness returned. But even through the pain, through the terror, a spark glowed inside Maggie's chest. Emily had heard her. She had heard. Thousands of miles away, in a small Florida home, Emily Dawson sat frozen with her phone in her hand, her heart racing so violently she thought she might faint. Her mother's voice still echoed in her ears. "Help me, trapped in Dubai?" Emily scrambled to her laptop, dialing numbers with trembling fingers. First the local police, then the FBI, then the emergency line for the U.S. Embassy in the UAE. Each call was met with protocols, with clipped voices and reassurances that reports would be filed and processes initiated. The weight of bureaucracy pressed down on her as minutes turned to hours. She slammed her fist against the desk, tears streaming down her cheeks. She doesn't have hours. But she refused to stop. If her mother could summon the strength to make that call from hell itself, Emily would fight through every wall of red tape on earth to bring her home. Time, though, time was enemy. And in Dubai, Maggie was running out of it. The days after the call were a blur of dread. Maggie felt the villa's walls closing in tighter with each hour. Guards shadowed her even inside her room, and Aisha barely dared to glance her way. Khalid had not spoken to her since the phone was discovered, but his silence was worse than his rage. It was the calm before a storm. The storm arrived at dusk. 2 guards entered, their faces stony. One seized her by the wrist, the other shoved her forward. Maggie stumbled, her lips still tender from the last beating. She didn't resist. Resistance only made it worse. They led her down corridors she hadn't seen before, deeper into the villa's belly. The air grew cooler, metallic, until they stopped before a heavy wooden door. One guard knocked, and it swung open. Inside was an office, not lavish like the main chambers, but stark, utilitarian. A steel desk sat at the center, stacked with folders and papers. Behind it stood Khalid. His white robes were immaculate, but his eyes were dark, burning with restrained fury. "Sit," he ordered. Maggie lowered herself into the chair opposite him, her heart racing. On the desk lay a thick file of documents, open and ready. Khalid pushed them toward her with deliberate calm. "You've delayed me long enough. Tonight, you sign. Every account, every property. All of it. Once it is done, perhaps I will let you walk away." She stared at the papers, her vision swimming. Her hands trembled against her lap. "And if I don't?" His smile was thin, predatory. "Then you will disappear into the sand like the others. No one will even whisper your name." The guard shifted behind her, their presence heavy. Maggie's pulse thundered. She thought of Emily, of the broken sob in her daughter's voice. Of home. She couldn't give in. Not now. Khalid slid a pen across the desk. Sign. Her fingers closed around it slowly, the weight cold and final. She lowered the tip to the paper, her hand trembling. Then suddenly, violently, she drove the pen upward. It sank into the soft flesh of Khalid's shoulder. He roared, staggering back, blood blooming across his white robes. The guard shouted, lunging forward, but Maggie was already on her feet. Adrenaline surged like fire through her veins. She shoved the chair into one guard, knocking him sideways, then bolted for the door. Chaos erupted. Khalid's bellow echoed down the corridor. Catch her. Don't let her leave. Maggie ran, her bare feet slapping against the cold floor. The hallway twisted into darkness. Panic clawed at her throat, until a figure darted out of the side passage and seized her arm. Maggie, this way. Aisha. The maid's eyes blazed with urgency as she pulled Maggie into a narrow corridor, almost hidden behind a hanging tapestry. They sprinted through cramped hallways lined with crates and cleaning supplies. Behind them, alarms began to blare, shrill, metallic, filling every corner of the villa. He's bleeding, Maggie gasped, her chest burning. I stabbed him. Good, Aisha hissed, but now he'll kill us both. They rounded a corner, nearly colliding with another guard. Aisha didn't hesitate. She hurled a bucket of cleaning solution into his face. He screamed, clutching his eyes, and they bolted past him. The villa felt alive with chaos. Doors slamming, shouts in Arabic, radios crackling with orders. Maggie's lungs ached, but she kept running, guided by Aisha's sure steps. Where are we going? Maggie cried. The back storerooms, Aisha said. There's a service gate, small but unguarded, if we're fast. They burst into a cavernous storage room, the air thick with dust. Wooden crates towered around them like walls. Aisha led her through a maze of boxes, toward a faint shaft of moonlight at the far end. Maggie's hopes surged. Freedom, so close. Then the pounding of boots thundered behind them. They're coming, she cried. Aisha shoved her forward. Don't stop. Keep moving. The shaft of moonlight grew larger, brighter. A narrow iron gate came into view, slightly ajar. Beyond it stretched the desert, vast and open, the dunes glowing silver beneath the night sky. Maggie's chest heaved, her body screaming in pain, but she ran harder than she ever had in her life. The alarms wailed, the shouts closed in, but the desert beckoned, wild, endless, free. If she could just reach it, maybe, just maybe, she had a chance. The desert air struck Maggie's face like a blast of fire as she and Aisha stumbled through the narrow iron gate. The alarms behind them wailed into the night, echoing across the villa's high walls. For one fleeting second, the silence of the open dunes spread before them, a vast ocean of sand glowing silver under the moon. Then came the roar. Engines ignited inside the compound, powerful and hungry. Headlights flared, slicing through the darkness. The Sheikh's men were already giving chase. Run! Aisha cried, tugging Maggie's arm. They scrambled over the sand, their feet sinking into the shifting earth with every step. Maggie's lungs burned. Her body screamed with fatigue. She was 65 years old, battered, half-starved. But adrenaline pushed her forward. Behind them, SUV tires shredded the dunes, beams of light zigzagging like predators in the night. The sand betrayed them. Every step was slower than the last, dragging them down. Maggie tripped and fell to her knees, coughing, grains of sand sticking to the sweat on her face. I can't, she gasped. You must. Aisha urged, pulling her up again. They'll catch us if you stop. The SUVs closed in, their engines growling like beasts. Shouts rang out in Arabic, carried by the desert wind. One vehicle swerved to cut them off, its headlights blinding. Maggie froze, panic seizing her chest. The desert stretched endless in all directions, nowhere to hide. Only dunes, shadows, and death. But then, a thought burned to the fog of terror. Emily, her daughter, the reason she had called, the reason she had fought. She couldn't let it end like this. Maggie turned to Aisha, her breath ragged. Listen to me. You have to go. Now. Aisha's eyes widened in horror. "No, we go together." "They want me, not you," Maggie insisted, her voice trembling but fierce. "If you stay, neither of us makes it." The SUVs barreled closer. Sand sprang from their tires. Aisha shook her head, tears shining in the moonlight. "I can't leave you." "You must," Maggie whispered, gripping her shoulders. "One of us has to live." Before Aisha could argue, Maggie shoved her hard toward a shadowed ridge of dunes. Aisha stumbled, caught herself, and looked back, anguish etched across her face. Maggie turned away before she could see it. She staggered into the open, waving her arms, screaming into the desert night. "Here! I'm here!" The headlights locked on her instantly. Tires screamed as the SUVs veered in her direction. Men shouted, doors opening, boots pounding against the sand. Her heart hammered, but she stood tall, every fiber of fear transmuted into raw defiance. If this was how it ended, at least Aisha would have a chance. At least Emily might still know the truth one day. The first guard lunged for her, seizing her by the arm and wrenching it painfully behind her back. Maggie cried out, collapsing to her knees as another guard grabbed her hair, yanking her head back, so she stared up into the blinding headlights. Behind her, faintly, she heard the sound of quickened footsteps. Aisha disappearing into the dunes. A fragile smile tugged at Maggie's cracked lips. She had bought her a chance. Maybe enough. The guards cursed, shouting to one another. One spoke urgently into a radio, reporting her capture. And then, through the haze of pain, Maggie thought she saw something else, a flicker of movement on the horizon, another set of headlights. But these did not belong to Khaled's men. Her vision blurred as the guards dragged her back toward the SUVs. The desert spun, her body aching, her spirit breaking. Still, she clung to one thought, one hope. Perhaps help was closer than they knew. The guards dragged Maggie across the sand like a broken doll, her body heavy with exhaustion, her wrists bound tight. Every muscle screamed, but she forced herself to stay upright, refusing to let them see her crumble. Behind her, the villa's lights glowed like a fortress against the endless night. Ahead, headlights cut across the dunes as more men arrived. She had no illusions left. The Sheikh would not forgive this. She had embarrassed him, defied him, and, in his world, there was only one punishment for that. "Move!" One of the men barked, shoving her forward. But before they could haul her into the waiting SUV, the desert lit up with a new glare. Sirens, flashing red and blue, tearing through the dark. A convoy of vehicles approached fast, dust spiraling in their wake. Maggie blinked against the sudden brightness, hope flaring for the first time in days. Police. The Sheikh's men froze, shouting in alarm. For once, their arrogance faltered. The SUV skidded to a halt as Dubai police stormed the scene, rifles raised, orders sharp and unyielding. The guards dropped Maggie as if she were suddenly worthless. Scrambling to obey, she collapsed into the sand, coughing, barely able to comprehend what was happening. Rough but not unkind hands pulled at her feet. A voice, firm, American, spoke beside her. "Mrs. Thompson, you're safe now. We've got you." An embassy official. Her knees gave way, but they caught her, wrapping a blanket around her trembling shoulders. For the first time since she'd stepped off that plane, she allowed herself to believe survival might be possible. Back at the villa, chaos reigned. Police stormed the marble halls, kicking down locked doors, dragging out terrified staff. Computers, documents, and stacks of passports were seized. Maggie glimpsed rooms she had never been allowed to enter, lined with safes, filled with evidence of countless scams, each one another broken life. The man she had called her Sheikh stood among it all, still cloaked in his spotless white robes, but the mask had cracked. His face was twisted with fury as officers restrained him, his smooth tongue useless against hard proof. "You don't understand who I am," he bellowed. "You'll regret this." Maggie looked at him one last time. The illusion that had once dazzled her now lay in ashes. He was not a savior, not a lover, not even a man of power. Just a predator who believed money and fear could make him untouchable. By morning, the desert was silent again. When Maggie stepped off the plane in Florida, the world felt both familiar and foreign. The humid air wrapped around her like a ghost of home. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but she walked past them in silence, her eyes fixed on a single figure. Emily. Her daughter ran into her arms, sobbing into her chest. For the first time in what felt like years, Maggie allowed herself to cry. "You're safe, Mom," Emily whispered, clutching her tightly. "You're home." Safe. The word rang hollow, yet it was all she had left. Weeks later, the villa's images flooded international headlines. Scandal in Dubai. Wealthy Sheikh exposed as international fraudster. Foreign women lured into golden cage. Maggie's name was hidden from the public, but she knew the story was hers. Her shame, her pain, now a cautionary tale for strangers. At night, the silence of her Florida home pressed heavy on her chest. She wandered through empty rooms, once filled with laughter, now echoing with memory. The scars on her wrists ached in the dark. She stood at the window, staring at the ocean horizon, the waves rolling endlessly toward her. A whisper slipped past her lips, so faint it barely carried in the air. "Love should never cost your soul." The words hung in the stillness, not bitter, not angry, just true. For Maggie, the story was over. But the shadows of it would remain, a warning etched into her bones. And in the silence, she finally understood survival was not the end. It was only the beginning of living with the ashes of illusion.